morning. Today we're going to learn a new way to tell the story of Jesus' resurrection. And we're going to use something called resurrection eggs. Colorful plastic eggs. Each one has inside it an item that will tell us a part of the Easter story. So let's get started. Our first egg has, what is that? It's a little donkey, isn't it? Does anyone remember how Jesus came in to the city? He came on a donkey. At the time when Jesus came, it was customary for kings or for royal people to come into a city on donkeys or on horses, and people would put their cloaks out or palm branches out, just as we recreate on Palm Sunday in many churches. So that was a very special thing for Jesus to be welcomed. Let's move on to the next egg. One of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I deliver Jesus to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment he sought an opportunity to betray Jesus. That is written in Matthew in the Bible. This is a sad part of the story where one of Jesus' followers, Judas Iscariot, received coins to betray Jesus. So that's what those silver coins represent, a betrayal. Let's move on to the next egg. The next egg is a light purple egg, and you shake it, something heavy in there. I think it's something that everybody would recognize. It's a little tiny, probably a little hard to drink out of, but I think we can probably remember that we've seen this somewhere. We see something like this on the altar during communion. And Jesus took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." Again, that's in Matthew, in the Bible. Jesus had a Last Supper, a special dinner with all of his disciples, his 12 closest friends who traveled with him. And that's what that chalice or cup represents, the Last Supper. Our next egg is the orange egg. And let's take a peek before we read what's in there. Looks like someone's hands that they're praying. Whose hands do you think that represents? Well, I'll give you a hint. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." So that represents Jesus' hands for praying. And he took with him Peter and James and John and began to be greatly distressed and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch." So Jesus knew he was going to die and there was going to be suffering involved. He accepted that, but he prayed to God for help to accept it. Okay, the next egg is our green egg, and inside is a horrible thing, actually. It's a whip, and it represents a whip that Pilate would have used to whip Jesus. They called it flogging at that time. And that's a horrible thing because Jesus was punished for doing something wrong, and he hadn't done anything wrong. Flogging was something that was done to criminals and thieves, and Jesus did not deserve that. Now, at this point in the story, Jesus was taken, and his followers were scattering. They were hovering around in the area, but they were scared because they felt that if Jesus were taken, then something would also happen to them as well. Peter began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, "I do not know this man of whom you speak," because many people were coming up to him saying, "You were with him." And immediately the rooster crowed a second time, and Peter remembered how Jesus had said to him, "Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter broke down and wept. And that's in the book of Mark, if you'd like to read it in the Bible. So, opening this yellow egg, we see a rooster, which was a grim reminder to Peter that he had denied Christ before the rooster crowed a second time. Okay. We'll move on to the light orange egg. This is something that also is probably very familiar. Maybe hard to see. I'll hold it up against the egg. It's a crown of thorns. We know Jesus was beaten. We know he was whipped. And it wasn't a good time for Jesus at this point. The soldiers took him into the governor's headquarters. They gathered the whole battalion before him. They stripped him of his clothes. They put a scarlet robe on him. They twisted together that crown of thorns and shoved it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand, and then they kneeled before him and mocked him and called him the King of the Jews. So it was certainly a time of great suffering for Jesus at that point. Now we'll move on to the light green egg. And the light green egg has something in it that looks like a cross, but it's not a cross. It represents nails. And it represents the nails that were used. They took Jesus, and he went out bearing his own cross to the place called the place of the skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on either side, and Jesus between them. Again, a lot of suffering for Jesus. The purple egg has something that I think people probably can recognize what that is as well. It's a spear. It's small. I'm sure it was a lot bigger, the one that was used back in Jesus's time. The soldiers came and broke the legs of the first, meaning the first of the other crucified people that were on either of Jesus's side. When they came to Jesus, they saw he was already dead. They did not break his legs, which would have sped up his death. One of the soldiers instead pierced his side with a spear, and at once there came out blood and water. So that's why there's a spear inside the purple egg. Okay. The light blue egg has some white cloth, like a nice light linen cloth inside. And that represents the type of linen that would have been wrapped around Jesus's body when his body was removed from the cross and laid in the grave. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Pilate ordered it to be given to him, and Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen shroud and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had cut into the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. And again, that's in Matthew, in the Bible, Matthew 27. And the pink egg has a stone in it. Certainly a lot smaller than the stone that would have been in front of the tomb in which Jesus' body lay. Behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing was white as snow. And for fear of him, the guards trembled and became like dead men. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe it means they fainted because they were afraid. But that stone that would have been in front of the tomb would probably have been heavier than a car. So certainly huge, something that only an angel could really roll away at that point. And now, the final egg. If you shake it, you don't hear anything. That's why. It's empty. And what does this represent? It represents the empty tomb, because Jesus rose from the dead. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has risen, as he said. Come, see the place where he lay." Again, that's in Matthew, in the Bible. Now this certainly, these 12 eggs that we just reviewed, doesn't tell you every part of the story. You can go and pick up your Bible, and you can look through Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John and find more details about Jesus and about the time from Palm Sunday through to Jesus' death and resurrection. And you can actually find other items and maybe get more plastic eggs and add items in and enlarge your collection here so that you can tell the story even in greater detail. But I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you have a wonderful Easter. Bye.